Yes, what we're involved in here is what is commonly known in New Zealand particularly is wax dipping. This is a form of preservation of beekeeping equipment by immersing it in hot wax, but in our case here we're using cooking oil. Now this is probably a first that I know of where cooking oil has been used for this purpose, but it, to my mind, is equally as good. We can get a very high temperature in cooking oil without the risk of it exploding into flame as happens with paraffin wax, and the end result is we're putting a vegetable oil impregnating into the timber, which is more natural to blend with the saps and oils in timber naturally, so against paraffin wax, which is a foreign substance. Now there's two very good reasons for this wax dipping or oil dipping process, and one is the preservation and lengthening the lifespan of the equipment that has been dipped in it. The other one, and probably the most important one, is the sterilization of equipment. Now in Fiji we have one bee disease in particular, American foul brood disease, which is endemic in the feral bees in Fiji, and there is always a risk of the contamination of that disease crossing from the feral bees into our domestic hives. One way to prevent the spread of that disease is having a very strict quarantine system within your beekeeping business. In our business here, we have to be very, very strict in this, because we are supplying bees and equipment to other smallholder beekeepers in the country who perhaps don't have the same level of experience and knowledge. So within our own company, we have a quarantine process, whereas any equipment that is used in beekeeping and then becomes unused for a period of time can be put back through here and sterilized. Now by dipping equipment in here at 170 degrees of temperature for up to 15 minutes will completely sterilize that equipment and make it safe for bees in the future. So we use this as a tool mainly for a quarantine and sterilization process to protect our reputation and protect the beekeeping industry of Fiji. The process is, as you see, a wood fire, a steel tank, and normal corn oil or just basic cooking oil. You could also use waste cooking oil that has come from, say, a company like McDonald's or something like that uses a lot of oil for cooking, and you could probably use their waste oil to do this processing as well. So that would cheapen the cost for anybody contemplating doing this. We have a temperature gauge, a thermometer, which we can measure the temperature, and we like to run this above 150 degrees Celsius. And I'll just check the temperature of this here now. And we have coming up to 200 degrees Celsius. Now if that was wax, it would be very close to exploding. With oil, it's still highly dangerous because it's hot, but it's safer to work with as a medium. So that is what I like about the cooking oil. So we've tested our temperature, we have sufficient heat there. So we'll put this away, and we can begin to place it in a box. Now for a start, we'll use a newly constructed box, and the process is to gently place that into the oil. And you'll see, because there's dampness in the timber, the oil will start to foam. Now to hold that down, we just place this across the top and immerse it completely. Now if we hold that there for 10 minutes, that will be completely sterile. A simpler method probably is to use one box instead of trying to hold that permanently. Place the second box on top and use that to weigh the bottom one down. So we can leave that to sit like that for 10 minutes, holding the bottom box down. 10 minutes time, we can remove our top box just carefully up onto here, which is our draining board. With this hook here, we can now pick this box up and bring it back out, draining the surplus oil from it, there to cool. Now you can see that box is now taken on the colour being varnished. It's very similar to the timber being varnished, and the basis of most oil-based paint is linseed oil, boiled linseed oil, and so therefore this is acting as a protective coating for the timber. It should extend its life. So if beekeepers wish to, when they make up new equipment, they can dip it if they want to extend the life. The next process is to put that box back in, the one we've started, and then we'll add a used box. This is a box that's been used on beekeeping. It's got propolis, it's got wax, it's got areas which could harbour bee spores. Now we'll put this one on top and we'll see, process the one below. So what we're looking for is above 150 degrees Celsius. We started off at 190. This temperature will slowly come back because we're immersing boxes in it. As long as it stays above 150 degrees Celsius, and for up to 15 minutes if you're doing sterilisation is the safest practice. Leave it there for 15 minutes. If you're only dipping for preservative purposes, probably 5 minutes is enough. But to be sure that a used box is properly sterilised, 15 minutes at above 150 degrees is the story. So we'll remove this again. Take out our new box. We'll bring back our used box. Place that in carefully again. You must be very careful here not to splash the oil. And as a weight, we put a second box on top again. Now that one, we are looking at sterilising this box, not preservation. This is preservation, this is sterilisation. So we would leave this here for 15 minutes, making sure our fire is keeping the oil hot at above 150 degrees. So after 15 minutes, we're able to remove this box. And you can see now that the wax particles that were inside that box have now been charred, and they're very easy just now to trim that off with a scraper, clean out these areas. And the outside surface is okay. Now generally when we dip these, once they're dry, we'd repaint them again to tidy them up before they go back into service again. So this process, while it's a wee bit expensive to set it up in the first place, each district, if you like, or province where beekeeping is being developed could develop something like this as a communal thing where all the beekeepers could use the same thing, because they're not using it for very long periods of time. And this also would be a great insurance against any spread of diseases. Plus it would extend the life of the equipment for the beekeepers, particularly in the tropics where the humidity and dampness is very high. So that's the process that we're using here. So that's our answer to being in control of bee diseases and having a quarantine system within our hives. The other quarantine system we have is each apiary of hives, each group of hives are kept separately around the countryside. If we bring honey from this group of hives, we extract it and we take the boxes back to that group of hives. We don't take boxes from one apiary to another and spread things around. That's where you can start to lose control of what you're doing. You can have a trace back system so that if you ever have a problem, you can quickly trace it back to the source, then you've got control. And this disease, particularly in Fiji, is prevalent in nearly every country in the world. It's not something unique to Fiji, but it is endemic in Fiji, something we can't eradicate, we have to learn to manage. And management techniques and systems are the way to control it, as they are in New Zealand, Australia, everywhere else in the world. Up to 1% of the hives, I think, in New Zealand are through this American foul brood disease. We have a very, very low incidence of it in Fiji, but we do have it. So to keep that incidence down, if we can have good housekeeping methods of managing our hives and looking after our bees, then particularly while beekeepers are perhaps not experienced or well educated in these sorts of things, these preventative measures can be introduced and assist in the establishment of the beekeeping industry as a commercial venture.